We're here in the sanctuary to see what goes on here. And if we remember, months ago when Mass would begin and we would process in from the back, the ministers would bow in front of the sanctuary before they would enter the sanctuary as a gesture of reverence, reverencing two things. One would be the tabernacle in the back, but also the altar, the table, which is a symbol of Christ. And you would remember that the priest and the deacon come around and we kiss the altar. And we kiss the altar partly, because it is a symbol of Christ, but there's also, going back to the really early days of the church when we had to be underground quite literally, the church celebrated Mass on the tombs, particularly of martyrs. And so once the church was able to come out of being underground, to keep that connectedness, the church brought relics. And we have first-class relics. There's 3 first-class, second-class, and third-class relics. A first-class relic is an actual tiny piece of, usually a bone of the saint. And so in this altar, there is a relic. Unfortunately, I do not know who is in our altar. We also have the first-class relic of Pope St. John Paul the Great over there, which is actually a drop of his blood. And we have several other first-class relics in the parish. So we are, in a sense, unique because post-Vatican II, the altars are not required to have a relic in them, but we do. And so that's one reason, again, why we continue to we kiss the altar as the symbol of Christ and showing our reverence for the martyr, probably, whose relic resides in this altar. We have, of course, in our parish, the presidential chairs, which are the wooden chairs. They're not necessarily the most comfortable things, but I believe that they're probably original to the parish, remembering our parish was founded in 1878 by Father Nardiello. And so I do believe that these chairs, as well as the servers' chairs, take us back to the original church, which predates this building. That was across the street. So I like that connectedness to our parish history as well at the presidential chair, which is the presider's chair here, and the deacon is usually to the right. So we have our deacon. And to my left, over here, we have the ambo, where the readings are proclaimed. How do we figure out what we do? Well, we have one of these cute little books. It's called an Ordo. It comes out once a year, or at the end of the year, and it tells us, look at what day, kind of like a calendar, it tells us what Mass to celebrate, or if we have options like today, we have 3 different options that we could celebrate today. And it tells us where to find all of those prayers and such, and the readings. We have the Roman Missal, which has all of the prayers for all of the Masses in it. The Eucharistic prayers, the prefaces, the opening and closing prayers, and all of those things are in here. So that helps, shows us where we're going. We have 2 other books that we use during the liturgy. One is the Book of Gospels, which we note that it is brought in procession, usually by the deacon, and placed here on the altar at the beginning of Mass. And when it's time for the Gospel procession, it's lifted and carried in procession around the altar again. It contains the Gospels, the words of Jesus. So it too is treated with much reverence in that it's carried in procession. We kiss it at the end of the proclaiming the gospel. The bishop, if the bishop is presiding, he would, at the end of the gospel, also bless the congregation with the Book of Gospels. So that's an important book as well. And then we have the lectionary. We have a Sunday lectionary. This is actually year C, because we're at the end of year A, and I have year B, which we're about to start in the office, and we have the weekday lectionaries. Sundays are on a 3-year cycle, A, B, and C, and for the most part, it's the Gospels that certainly move along. A, we've heard from Matthew's Gospel. Year B, we'll hear predominantly from Mark's Gospel, but because Mark is so short, over the summer, John's Gospel goes in there to make up those weeks, and year C is St. Luke's Gospel. And then we have the Weekday Lectionary, which is on a 2-year cycle. So we get through the scriptures in a few years. The ambo over here, again, is reserved for the proclamation of the word. The lector will read the readings from here. The psalm is sung from here by the cantor. And the homily, which is based on the word that we just heard, is all done from here. Other announcements or non-essentials would either be done at the presidential chair or over on the cantor's lectern. We move back over here. We have some of the other items that we use for Mass. And generally speaking, we also think of in the terms of what we know. It looks like this, looks like a table, and it is. And we have meals at a table, and that's what we have here when we celebrate liturgy. And just like the table at home, somebody's got to set the table. So we have several things. The first thing that gets put down on the altar to prepare for Mass is this, which is called a corporal. And it's folded in a very special, particular way. If you saw how I unfolded it. It's because we're celebrating liturgy here and the body and blood of Christ will be here. It's designed that should a piece of the Eucharist break off and fall on the table, it doesn't end up on the floor and we walk over it. So how it's folded becomes very, very important, that when you would fold it up and down and in. So anything that fell inside would get locked in, and then we could appropriately and respectfully take care of that after Mass. We have one of these. It's called a pall. Interesting word, I'm not sure exactly why, but it's called a pall. And post-Vatican II, they kind of went out of use. However, I found that it has a very good use, especially now when we were having to keep the doors and such open during liturgy. Flies. We don't want a fly to get into the chalice. And wine is sweet, so it would attract flies. So I always make sure that I keep a pall on the altar. And if the deacon is with me, I keep a second pall, because right now we use the 2 chalices to try and keep everybody safe. So the deacon has a chalice that only he will use, and I have the chalice that only I would use. We have also the paten, which is a little dish that the bread is put into. And we have a purificator, and certainly you're setting your table, it looks, that's right where the napkin kind of goes, on the side of the placemat. And really, in a sense, it's a liturgical napkin. We use it after we receive communion to wipe your mouth, or even the chalice. Always trying to be respectful of the Eucharist. That's of the utmost importance when we celebrate liturgy. So that's some of the things that we do here in this very special portion of the church. So hopefully you learned a little bit of something, at least something that you didn't know before, or understood a little bit more of why we do some of the things that we do. Especially, I know, kissing the altar does sound or seem perhaps a little odd, but now you know why. Because the altar itself is a symbol of Christ, but it also has a relic that we want to pay tribute to as well, and honor. And when we do bring out our relics, one of the ways that we can venerate that relic is a kiss, as we do on Good Friday with the cross itself. So I hope you learned a little bit more about what we do, and a little bit more of the things in our church in particular. Thank you.